Okay, so we're beginning the review for the test, and I gave the kids a question. I said, if you had x squared plus 4x minus 5, could you figure out the vertex and the axis of symmetry? And they've had a minute or two to work here, so let's give it a shot. Ethan, can you tell me how I find the x equals line that's called the axis of symmetry?
Negative b over 2a.
Yep, so therefore, in this case, like what's the negative b?
Oh, negative b is negative 4.
Over 2 times a, which is
1.
excellent. Final simplification?
Negative 2.
Correct. There is your x equals thing. Now I know the x of the vertex. Sean Nunez, can you take it over from there? If this is negative 2, do you know how to figure out that?
Yeah, you put the negative 2 in right there.
All right. And that negative 2 squared is 4. And then this is negative 8. Weird. It always seems to be double and opposite. And it's not always. That could be a 3, or it could be a 5, or it could be a 7. And so I didn't want to make you think this is a fact that this is always double and opposite. Because if the number, right here was different, then they wouldn't. But I've used a lot of even numbers there because I know it works out to give us a nice, easy x number. So anyway, it's not always double and opposite. But that came out to negative 4 minus 5 makes negative 9. Raise your hand if you had that one. Awesome. Would you please just sketch it now? And that'll tell us whether you know if it's up or down. Just make a sketch of it. If you know the vertex. You can start with a vertex, of course. George, how do I do this?
Find a vertex.
Yeah, well, let's start with that.
You have to plug the x back into the equation.
Okay. I think what I'm trying to say is we're trying to sketch it right now. So what do I do?
Oh, like where is the vertex?
Yeah, so I'm going to just graph it to save us some time there. And now what do I do to actually graph this parabola here? Except not a full-on graph where you'd have to have 5 clean points, but just a sketch.
You have to figure out which side goes up and down.
All right, good. And since in the front here it's a positive number, what does that tell you?
The right side is facing up.
Yep, and if it's a parabola, it has to go like that, and they have to both be the same. Why do they have to both be the same? Because there's an even degree. All right, so there's a little sketch of it. And then if you wanted the axis of symmetry line in there, you'd go like that. That is not required in the graph of a parabola, but it doesn't hurt. I wouldn't mark it wrong for putting that in there. All right, this same exact equation now, I'm just going to rewrite it. There's something else you could do to figure out the x-intercepts. Like it touches here and it touches here. There's something else you could do. What do you do to this thing to find the x-intercepts? If you haven't already, please write this problem down and prepare to do something to it. I hope that it becomes just a reflex in here. That if you're looking at a problem and you're like, not sure what to do, you think of my favorite saying. If you can factor it, you should. This can factor. It doesn't always answer the question, but if it does factor, you should do it and see what it looks like. This one ends up being plus 5 and x minus 1. And it does, in this case, answer the question. X equals negative 5 and x equals 1. See, look. Here's negative 5 right here, and here's positive 1. It even matches up with my graph. It kind of is in the right spots. Makes sense. Okay, so those are the x-intercepts. If I was writing this x-intercept, I would say it is at 1, 0. That's fine for a 0, but if you want an x-intercept, you should really write it like that. The test should be clear about how they want you to write that. If it's not clear, you can always ask me, how do you want me to write that? And I would say, if it's an x-intercept, write it like that, because x-intercepts have y equal to 0. So I put a 0 here, This would be negative 5 comma 0. All right, cool. So what else do you have to know how to do? Well, if I give you an equation, like for instance, 2x squared plus 4x minus 1, you should be able to tell me a whole bunch of things. Number one, how many terms does it have? Number two, you don't have to like write terms, you can just write A, B, C if you want to. It would be good for your notes if you had the word terms, but just give me the answer to how many terms there are for sure. If you're more of a note taker, you want to remember this better, write it out. What is the lead term? What is the lead coefficient? What is the x-axis of symmetry? What is the vertex? We just did that, so it should be like fresh in your mind on how to do that. And F, what's the equation? Well, that's the equation, but I want the equation in vertex form. Now, I'll give you an example. This is not the right answer. If the vertex had been 1, 5, it would have looked like this. So it's like that answer, but it's not that answer. All right, let's see if you know these concepts. All on the test. Well, at least I should say. They're all things we can test you on. Okay, and then now I'm going to have to add a couple because there's even more stuff you have to know. G, I want you to sketch this thing. That does not mean graph. You don't have to find 4 accurate points in an XY chart, or 5. Just sketch it. But that means you just need the vertex and kind of know if it's up or down. But then it'll become obvious. Is the right side going up or down? And is the left side going up or down? So many things to know. Okay, let's see how you did. Let's call on some different people. Let the dice choose. Greta, it's you. What's the number? Let's do the first 3, Greta. What's the number of terms?
3.
3 is correct. That, and that are terms. What's the lead term?
2x squared.
2x squared. What's the lead coefficient?
2.
2. Since that's positive, I'm going to write there at that moment, say, since that's positive, we know something about the right end. Alex, would you take over here? The right end, since this is positive, is what? It goes up. Good. Now the left end, Addie, this tells me whether it's the same or different.
It's the same.
It's the same. So it's up and up. All right. Next is axis of symmetry. Iris.
X equals -1.
X equals -1. I'm guessing you got it from negative b over 2a, right? That'd be -4 over 2 times 2, which is -4 over 4, which is x equals -1. Awesome. Now the vertex. -1 comma. Arrow, can you tell me? You stuck that -1 in the equation, what'd you get? Raise your hand if you had 1. -1, 1. Oh, and maybe it's not right then. We're going to try that one together, Arrow. Let's go put in the -1 right here with me. Oh, it's 2. I'm going to double check. That becomes 1. 1 times 2 is 2. That makes -4. 2 and -4 makes -2. Okay, so let's do this one more time. This becomes 2. This becomes -4, and this becomes -1. Final answer? Can you do it? I know you're under a lot of pressure now, but... Okay, So then that's negative 2, but you put the up, there you go, negative 3. Does anybody agree with negative 3? Okay, good. All right, now, I said make the equation in vertex form. It's kind of like this, but it's obviously not that. The vertex goes here, and the vertex was negative 1. Oh, it'd be so easy to put a negative 1 there, but you got to put a positive 1 there. You don't trust stuff on the inside of the parentheses. And then the negative 3 goes there. And is there a 3 in front? No, but there is something in front.
2.
The 2. Remember this 2 here? If you forgot that, boom, you just lost at least 5%. Okay. Minimum I can take off on a test. But I think it'd probably just be wrong. So, all right. Next up is sketching it. Okay, so if I know that its vertex is negative 1, negative 3, then I'm down here, and this is a right side up parabola because there was no negative in the front. So it looks something like that. Now, could I ask you for the x-intercepts? Yes, I could, and that's what I'm going to do now. Take the same equation, I'll rewrite it for you because it got messy. 2x squared plus 4x minus 1. And we already know what we need to try to factor this thing. And the question is, will it factor or not? Try it. So letter I is the x-intercepts, which you usually get by factoring. So you got to know the follow-up to the saying, if you can factor it, you should. Because I don't think this one's going to factor. It's got to be a plus and a minus, and then it's got to be a 1 and a 1. The only way to make this number be a 1 is to use a 1 and a 1. Do you get that that makes negative 2x and positive 1x? That does not make 4x. And even if I reverse the ones, well, it's going to be the same. If I reverse the plus and the minus, it's still not going to make 4. So that's what you would want to try, but so if you can factor it, you should. It's really a good thing to try, but then what's the follow-up? Quadratic formula. Everybody use the quadratic to get the x-intercepts. They're going to look weird. They're going to have a square root in it because the quadratic formula has a square root. Ryan, I know that this is not a strong point, but making you recall it now might make it stick forever. X equals negative?
B
Yep.
plus or minus
Yep.
square root
Yep.
negative B, no B
B squared, you're really close,
plus 4AC
minus 4ac
all over 2A.
all over 2a. One way to remember it is there isn't a plus sign in the whole thing. There's a plus minus sign, but there is no plus sign in the whole quadratic formula. There's a couple negatives, and there's a plus minus. Okay, so there's no pluses in the quadratic formula. All right, Anna, you're up next. Negative b in this case is negative
4.
plus or minus the square root of, just do b squared.
4 squared.
Yep, which is 16 minus 4 times a is 2 times c is negative 1. All over 2a, which is 2 times 2, which is 4. Clean this up. Would you ever have to simplify something that nasty? Absolutely. It's right on the top 20. You know, that little quiz that we took the other day, the average score is about 10 out of 20. It's one of those basics. You're supposed to know this from algebra, but it was probably one of the hardest algebra things you did. Got to simplify that into 2 square roots. Tully, can you tell me 2 things that multiply to 24? Because I'm going to make root this and root that, and it's going to make 24.
4 and 6.
Yes. And he chose wisely. You could have chose 12 and 2, but the thing with 12 and 2 is that neither one of them works out nice. But Dominic, you're taking over now. What's the square root of 4 and the square root of 6 simplify to further?
2,
2 what?
square root of 6.
2 root 6. Good. Now I'm going to rewrite it because it got messy. Some people that really don't know algebra are going to cancel the 4's at this point. Do you get that you can't? Why not? Because if you ever want to know, like, can I cancel that? Just look at that. That's 9/4. Can we cancel it and say the answer is 5? No, that doesn't make sense. If this was 4 times 5 is 20 divided by 4, that is 5, then you could cancel it. So you can always make yourself that little thing if you need to remember, oh yeah, if I got to make it a times so I can cancel that. So that means you got to factor it. The top can factor. And there's a plus minus in the middle of that parentheses. That's the hardest basic that's in here. Mason, can you tell me what this factors to? Giving you the hardest one so far.
I don't know.
All right, I'll help you. See how they both have a 2 in them?
Yeah.
So the 2 comes out. And then you're really dividing them all by 2. So tell me what goes here when you divide this by 2.
-2.
All right, keep going. You divide this by 2.
It would just be the square root of 6.
It would be. Very nice. And on the bottom, the 4 can be factored into
2.
times 2. I mean, 4 isn't 2, but 4 is 2 times 2. And I know we're going to cancel it, but we don't want to cancel it until we cancel both of them at the same time. Doom. There it is. And again, a weak algebra student might think, can I cancel those 2's now? It seems so tempting. There's a 2 in both spots. Can you? No. This is part of an add subtract problem. All right, but there is your final answer. In honors, we make kids get the decimal for this, which would be a real pain in the butt. But you could if you used a calculator, because you'd have to get the square root of 6, get that as a decimal, and then do -2 plus that decimal, and then you got to make sure you don't forget the parentheses around all that, and then divide by 2, and it's a pain. But we would be done right there. Okay. All right, so look at how intense that one problem was, all from that one quadratic. That is a good problem. We talked over like half of the test in that one question. So, I now want to move into hardcore factoring. So I'm going to give you a easy factoring, and then a medium factoring, and then a hard factoring. And then I'm just going to have you work on this factoring quiz, and you're going to do that for the rest of the hour. If it dribbles over into anchor time, you just think of it as homework. You finish it up during anchor time as part of your homework from this class. It shouldn't go far into anchor time. The quiz should be quick. So here's a nice easy one. Some people get annoyed by it because they're like, what's the third number? You don't need it. You just need to find a GCF. Factor it out to the front. And then I'll throw up the medium one because I know some people are already done with that one. There's easy and medium. I'm going to put them all on the same page because I can tell some people are already done with both of those. Next, I'm going to do another medium, and it's 2x squared plus 3x plus 1. That's one of the kind where inside your factors, one of them has to be 2x. Okay, and the last one, I'll make it blue, is the hardest factoring of all. But if you want to have a chance at an A on this test, you'll have to be able to do the hard kind of factoring. First thing you do is look for something that's in everything. They all have something in common. The numbers are just so big that if you had to try to factor that the normal way without factoring out a GCF first, it'd be like really hard. So factor out a GCF first. And then it's not that hard. Okay. The first one, I'll do that one, it's pretty easy. You factor out a 2 and an x, and I get x plus 2. And if you want, this is the one part of the test where you can know the answer. You can know if you did it right. Just multiply it back out. And that would give you 2x squared plus 4x. Please give me a feeling if you're getting this right. Who had the first one right? Raise your hand if you did. Okay, good. Next up, this one is a perfect square, and this one's a perfect square, and it's a minus. That's a tip that this is one of those perfect square differences. A difference, that's a minus, of squares. 5x and 5x, and plus 4 and minus 4. Who had that one right? Okay. If you didn't, please look at it and see that pattern. It's not that hard if you take the square roots. Okay, next up. This does not have anything to pull out to the very front. So then I go 2x and x. Then I can say it's only pluses. That's easy. It has to be plus and plus. And last, this has to multiply to a 1, and there's only one thing that does that. And now you just have to check if it actually did factor. That and that together make 2x and 1x makes 3x. Yay, it worked. And then last but not least, this one. Alex, did you notice that something came out of all three numbers? What 3 did? 3 comes out, and then you get 2x squared minus 7x minus 4. Somebody take it from there. Mason, do you get this one?
Yeah, and then it's 2, and then you factor it more, it's 2x plus 1, and then x minus 4.
I think you're right. The way I check you is go like this. That's negative 8x, and this one is 1x. If I put them together, that is negative 7x. That's what I wanted. Cool. How many of you are feeling good about the factoring part of this test? Be honest. Are you feeling good about the factoring part of this test? Okay, good. If you're not, then you need to come up and get some help during work time. So I'm going to open up a Schoology quiz, which is just on factoring. And then your homework, I'm going to give you 2 days to do the homework. Okay, because this factoring quiz might take you the rest of the whole hour. And tonight, we don't have to get the factoring all done and turn it in tomorrow. You have 2 nights to do that. If you're the dream student, you're going to finish the factoring quiz in class and then do all your homework tonight. That makes your life easier tomorrow. If you've got the time, do that. All right? That's the end of the video for today.